the floor to Christoph Horn, our first speaker on ancient philosophy and space in ancient philosophy. Now, Christoph is professor and director of practical philosophy and ancient philosophy at the University of Bonn, and his work focuses on ancient philosophy, but also on contemporary practical philosophy. He's particularly interested in the writings of Plato, Aristotle, and Kant. His systematic interest lies mainly in contemporary moral philosophy, political philosophy, and the theory of action. In his monographs, he dealt with Plotinus, Augustine, and the ancient art of living. Two of his works are Einführung in die Moralphilosophie, so Introduction into Moral Philosophy, Nicht-ideale Normativität, ein neuer Blick auf Kants politische Philosophie, and perhaps more apt for today, he also has a monograph on Plotinus about being, number, and unity. And together with Graziano Ranocchia, I hope I pronounced the name rightly, and Christoph Helmich, he has an edited volume on space in Hellenistic philosophy, critical studies in ancient physics with De Gruyter from 2014. Christoph Horn today will talk on Aristotle's discussion of place, topos, in physics 4. Christoph, the floor is all yours.
Thank you, Katja, for having me and for this very kind introduction. Am I audible? Can you hear me? I think so. So let me share the screen. First of all, I have to again apologize for not being able to remain in this wonderful session until the end. I have to leave due to very unfortunate circumstances at 5 p.m. But let me read out for the next 25 minutes or so text which I wrote in the last days and which brings together some of the considerations and arguments advanced by Aristotle. In Physics Book 4, chapters 1 to 5, Aristotle develops his theory of place, of topos. He does so in a highly dialectical manner, i.e. by discussing his own view, confronting it with widely shared opinions, with objections and alternative standpoints, going back and forth, so that it is not so easy to identify his precise position. What is clear, however, is that Aristotle does not defend what might be seen as the standard view in ancient times, namely that place means a three-dimensional extension and being located within the three-dimensional extension. He rejects that view even explicitly. Instead, he maintains that topos is, I quote, the first immobile surface of what surrounds what is meant the body. I will try to shed some light upon this definition a few minutes in section 4, but before we'll come to this crucial point, I would first like to show you how Aristotle deals with the question if topos exists in the first place. Given that he accepts the existence of place, I will turn to the problem of what he thinks place is. In a short side glance, then I will present Aristotle's idea of a so-called topos oikeos, i.e. the natural place where light and heavy elements, namely fire and air as light elements and water and earth as heavy ones, respectively, go if they can move unimpededly. First section. Aristotle is convinced that place in fact exists. The first reason he provides for this claim is that we can distinguish between existing and non-existing entities by tentatively localizing them. One might call this the criterion of localizability, since mythological entities such as a goat stag, a tragelaphos, or a sphinx cannot be found at any place, we are entitled to conclude that they do not exist, whereas we can successfully localize, for instance, the city of Athens or Mount Olympus, and are hence justified in assuming their existence. Aristotle's idea seems to be as follows. If topos is something which constitutes the difference between existence and non-existence, that it cannot be in itself a non-existent, fictitious entity. The difficulty with this argument is that if we take it seriously, we seem to fall into the trap of an infinite regress. For if existing things must meet the criterion of localizability, then place must be localizable. But if we assume that there is a place where place is located, then we would have to additionally accept a place for the place, and so forth. It was already the Eleatic thinker Zeno who advanced this fatal argument. From this challenge, Aristotle draws the conclusion that place cannot be something substantial and corporeal. It must be that in which corporeal substances are not only located, but also moved. One might call this Aristotle's argument from locomotion. If a corporeal substance can be moved from place to place while its substantiality is preserved, then we can maintain that place must exist. An additional consideration close to this argument from locomotion, which he presents us, is his argument from mutual replacement, anti-metastasis. I quote it completely. It's taken from chapter 1 of book 4. The existence of place is held to be obvious from the fact of mutual replacement. Where water now is, there in turn, when the water has gone out as from a vessel, air is present. And at another time, another body occupies the same place. This place is thought to be different from all the bodies which come to be in it and replace one another. What now contains air formerly contained water, so that clearly the place or space into which and out of which they passed was something different from both. End of quotation. The argument seems to be this: place is something that preserves the identity of a substance despite its alteration. According to the argument from locomotion, the persistence of a substance over time is hence guaranteed by place. But there is more to it. Following the Aristotelian principle of antimetastasis, the water which was poured out of the vessel is now replaced by air. This implies that there must be three existing things involved: water, air, and the place that leaves room for their locomotion. According to the argument from antimetastasis, we have to assume that there are three entities involved. Otherwise, we could not say that the air replaces the water at its former place. But if place is something that leaves room for substances, shouldn't it be seen as empty, as a vacuum, a void, a canon? Aristotle explicitly rejects this idea developed in ancient atomism. We know it from Democritus or Epicurus in Physics book 4, chapters 6 to 9. One of his considerations against the assumption of a void is that locomotion, a change of place, through the void would be impossible. In another passage, Aristotle argues that if we put a cube into an empty space, it would penetrate and become concurrent with a part of void equal to the cube's volume. This originates from the fact that in Aristotle's system, only bodies can displace each other and void is no body. Hence, a part of void will penetrate and coincide with the cube. If we deprive the cube of all its properties, such as its constituent matter or color, it won't even be possible to distinguish the resulting pure extension from the coincident part of void. Consequently, void is either identical to the body's extension or indistinguishable from it. In either case, its existence is superfluous in describing reality. Second little section. Let us now look at what sort of entity Aristotle thinks place is. I quote a passage from Physics 4.1, which deals with that issue. I quote, "True, but even if we suppose its existence settled, the question of what it is presents difficulty, whether it is some sort of bulk of body or some entity or other than that, for we must first determine its genus." First point. Now, it has 3 dimensions: length, breadth, and depth. The dimensions by which all body is bounded. But the place cannot be body, for if it were, there would be 2 bodies in the same place. Second consideration, second point. Further, if body has a place and space, clearly so too have surface and the other limits of body. For the same argument will apply to them. Where the bounding planes of the water were, there in turn will be those of the air. But when we come to a point, we cannot make it and its place. Hence, if the place of a point is not different from the point, no more will that of any of the others be different, and place will not be something different from each of them. So place cannot be a point. Third consideration, what in the world then are we to suppose place to be? If it has the sort of nature described, it cannot be an element or composed of elements, whether these be corporeal or incorporeal. For while it has size, it has no body. But the elements of sensible bodies are bodies, while nothing that has size results from a combination of intelligible elements. Fourth consideration. Also, we may ask of what in things is space the cause. None of the 4 modes of causation can be ascribed to it. It is neither cause in the sense of the matter of existence, for nothing is composed of it, nor as the form and definition of things, nor as end, nor does it move existence. Fifth point. Further, 2, if it is itself an existent, it will be somewhere. Zeno's difficulty, which we already saw, demands an explanation, for if everything that exists has a place, place too will have a place, and so on ad infinitum. Sixth consideration, again, just as every body is in place, so too every place has a body in it. What then shall we say about growing things? It follows from these premises that their place must grow with them if their place is neither less nor greater than they are. End of quotation. The central points of this passage are: first, place cannot be a body, since otherwise we had to assume that there are 2 bodies at the same place. Second, it cannot be a point, a stigma, since otherwise place would not be something different from what is in it. Third, place cannot be an element or composed of elements. Fourth, place cannot be a cause. Fifth is the difficulty of Zeno, and sixth, place grows with the growth of things. A bit later in the text, Aristotle provides an intense discussion of what it means for an X to be in a certain place and topo. He distinguishes between 4 possibilities and then exclude that place can mean A, the form of X, B, the matter of X, C, the interval between the limits of what contains X. Instead, D, Aristotle is in favor of the following definition: topos is the limit of the surrounding body at which it is in contact with that which is surrounded. Hence, a point cannot be a place for something, and it cannot be in a place. Place should also not be understood, as I already said, in the sense of the void, the vacuum, the cannot, which Aristotle rejects explicitly. Locomotion, the change of place through the void, would be impossible. The place does not have, in this sense, length, width, and height. It is not itself a body, and hence Aristotle can avoid the absurdities. First, that the place would be in a place, as I said, the infinite regress, and second, that the two bodies could then be simultaneously, could be simultaneously at the same place. Aristotle believes that topos should be understood like a vessel in which something is contained. Additionally, Aristotle defends the theory of a natural place, as we will see, by which he wants to indicate something. We will see that below, which moves to a natural place. Aristotle attacks in Physics 2.2 the Platonic treatment of place in the Timaeus, even if he acknowledges some of its background assumptions. I quote again, if then we look at the question in this way, the place of a thing is its form. But if we regard the place as an extension of the magnitude, it is the matter, for this is different from the magnitude. It is what is contained and defined by the form as by a bounding plane. Matter, or the indeterminate, is of this nature, for when the boundary and attributes of a sphere are taken away, nothing but the matter is left. This is why Plato in the Timaeus says that matter and space are the same, for the participant and space are identical. It is true indeed that the account he gives there of the participant is different from what he says in his so-called unwritten teachings. Nevertheless, he did identify place and space. I mention Plato because while all hold place to be something, he alone tried to say what it is, namely some sort of a recipient or some sort of a matter. But Plato's identification of place and matter is excluded. Aristotle explains this as follows. But it is at any rate not difficult to see that place cannot be either of them. The form and the matter are not separate from the thing, whereas the place can be separated. As we pointed out, where air was, water in turn comes to be, the one replacing the other, and similarly with other bodies. Hence, the place of a thing is neither a part nor a state of it, but is separable from it. For place is supposed to be something like a vessel, the vessel being a transportable place, but the vessel is no part of the thing. End of quote. The argument against the equation of place and form, or of place and matter, is that topos is not an inherent aspect of an entity, whereas form and matter are. Place can therefore be separated from the substantial entity. We see already here that Plato is in favor of a vessel or container model of what topos in fact is. Third point, in Physics 4.1, Aristotle adds an argument for the existence of place to those we discussed above. I quote, further, the locomotions of elementary natural bodies, namely fire, earth, and the like, show not only that place is something, but also that it exerts a certain influence. Each is carried to its own place if it is not hindered, the one up the other down. Now these are regions or kinds of place, up and down, and the rest of the 6 directions. Nor do such distinctions, up and down and right and left, before and behind also, hold only in relation to us. To us, they are not always the same, but change with the direction in which we are turned. That is why the same thing is often both right and left, and up and down, before and behind. But in nature, each is distinct, taken apart by itself. It is not every chance direction which is up, but where fire and what is light are carried. Similarly, too, down is not any chance direction, but where what has weight and what is made of earth are carried. The implication being that these places do not differ merely in position, but also as possessing distinct powers. End of quotation. In this passage, we find the famous doctrine of natural places. Errol Katayama, in an article from 2011, distinguishes between a strict and a loose sense of speaking of the heavy and the light, and then explains, I quote, "To be heavy in the strict sense is to be in the center of the sublunary sphere, and in the loose sense is to have a tendency to move towards it. To be light in the strict sense is to be in the circumference of the sublunary sphere, and in the loose sense to have a tendency to move towards it. The natural place of an element is defined primarily as that in which it rests naturally, and secondarily as that to which it has a tendency to move. For example, fire's natural place is in the upper region of the sublunary realm, and its natural motion is to move upwards. If fire is located anywhere else, it is brought to that place by force and remains there by force. In other words, fire is light in the strict sense when it rests in its light, when or has the tendency to be light. By the doctrine of natural places and the tendencies of the elements for them is the Aristotelian to a theory of gravitation. Although seems to be a very successful theory, evil thought. Finally, section 4 considers place as the first boundary of a body embracing or containing the body in question. In this context, he rejects the idea that place is a three-dimensional extension. One of the arguments against the standard view goes as follows: if place had length, width, and depth, and if a thing which has length, width, and depth was a body, then we had to conclude that place is also a body. However, this would lead into the absurdity of two bodies, the object and its place, coinciding, or that two different bodies somehow existed at the same place. Aristotle's consideration is certainly not a very sound argument, since topos could be extended without being a body. At any rate, he believes that the appropriate definition of place should be based on the external borders, limits, or boundaries of the body, which is at a certain place, i.e., its surfaces. A crucial point for an appropriate understanding of this position is that he compares topos with a vessel or a container. The basic characteristics of place are developed in the following quote: "Let us take for granted about it the various characteristics which are supposed correctly to belong to it essentially. We assume first that place is what contains that of which it is the place. And it is no part of the thing. Again, that the primary place of a thing is neither less nor greater than the thing. Again, that place can be left behind by the thing and is separable. And in addition to all place admits of the distinction of up and down, and each of the bodies is naturally carried to its appropriate place and rests there, and this makes the place either up or down. Given these basic features of place, Aristotle then continues, place is thought to be something important and hard to grasp, both because the matter and the shape present themselves along with it, and because the displacement of the body that is moved takes place in a stationary container, for it seems possible that there should be an interval which is other than the bodies which are moved. The air, too, which is thought to be incorporeal, contributes something to the belief. It is not only the boundaries of the vessel which seem to be place, but also what is between them regarded as empty. Just, in fact, as the vessel is transportable place, so place is a non-transportable vessel. So when what is within a thing which is moved and changes, as a boat on a river, what contains plays the part of a vessel rather than that of place. Place, on the other hand, is rather what is motionless. So it is rather the whole river than that is place, because as a whole it is motionless. Hence, the place of a thing is the innermost motionless boundary of what contains it. End of quotation. There are several serious objections against Aristotle's theory of place. Some of them can be traced back to the later commentators John Philoponus in his corollary on place, and to Simplicius. I think Christoph Helmich will speak on these issues a bit later. Kempe Alchra in his article discusses 4 of these objections. Namely, first, Aristotle's arguments against the conception of place as 3-dimensional extension are problematic. Second, Aristotle's solution seems to work only for stable bodies having clear-cut surfaces and being static. It seems insufficient for the explanation of the trajectory of bodies in motion. Third, it seems impossible to reconcile Aristotle's position with the claim that place is unmoved or immobile, but we find this claim explicitly in Aristotle. And fourth, according to the Aristotelian cosmology, the outer sphere of the heavens does not have a surface and hence has no place. But then not all bodily entities would have a place following the criterion of localizability. I stop here. My conclusion is simply that I think that Alchra is right and that we cannot defend Aristotle against these objections, as tried to do Ben Morrison in his monograph from 2002. Thank you for your attention.